Hello, everyone. So, we've got a brand new Transformers live action movie coming out eventually. But with everyone hyped up about it and wondering if it's going to be on what end of the live action spectrum is it going to end up on, I figured now wouldn't be a bad time to kind of go over the live action movies in my personal preference order from worst to best. Now, this is the kind of thing that I would have liked to have done for this is like a ranking style video, but I can't do a tier list because there's only 6 entries. And I'm not going to start like wedging in the 86 movie and like Predacons Rising just because it's technically a movie. So instead, we're just going to stick to the 6 live action movies. And I'm just going to have one video that's kind of a blanket response of this is how I feel about these movies. And if you've heard me over the years, it's probably not hard to figure out where they rank, but we're going to do it anyway just for the sake of having it all in one spot. So, first off, number 6 on my list, the absolute bottom of the barrel for me, is Revenge of the Fallen. I hate this movie. I hate, hate this movie. This one came right before the writer's strike. Actually, it was in production during the writer's strike. So, yeah, you can definitely tell that the script that apparently, if my recollection is correct, had a whole 2 weeks of work in it, did not have the usual filtering that these Transformer movies tend to do. So a lot of the Michael Bay-esque elements of this movie are very, very strong. Lots of shots of the military, uh, lots of uh, lots of frat boy humor that feels really out of place in a movie made about children's toys. Um, a lot of really sloppy handling of things. Devastator being taken out by some Deus Ex laser, sloppy. Optimus Prime being brought back by a random transformer that just popped up in the scene, sloppy. Uh, the twins, oh my god, the twins. There's not a thing about the twins that's redeemable. Like even if you don't view them as racist caricatures, they're still terrible, terrible characters. They're just wholeheartedly unlikable. That's something to keep in mind. My opinion. If you like them, you like them. Nothing wrong with that. But for me, it's just like I hate their presence. I hate their existence. And there's a lot of here that's just a mess. The Fallen is a nothing of a villain. He just broods in space, pops up for the last 5 minutes, and doesn't really do a whole lot. So there were like whatever menace they're trying to raise with him just didn't work and didn't pay off. Certainly, I hated the design work on the Constructicons. You'll never convince me Demolishor makes sense. It looks nice as a CG set piece, but there is no logic to a character who is designed like a double Ferris wheel. And then you get characters like RC and, like I said, Jolt, who was like, there's such like brief moments in the movie. Why'd you bother with them? You know? Okay, so fine. We have the RC triplets. They get one chase scene that's so dark you can barely see them. One of them has a line at the end of the movie before they get killed, and then I don't even know if you saw the other two get uh, beyond that. It was just what's the point of the characters that exist for 1 minute just to get killed off? I don't know. So I there's nothing about this. Like of all the movies, I think I could rewatch any of the Transformer movies except this one. This one just gets on my nerves way too much. So if this wasn't enough, number 5, not a whole lot better. We're looking at The Last Night. So before this movie came out, they were telling people they had a writer's room where they came up with something like 8 different ideas for what the next Transformer movie could be. What they didn't tell anyone was that they put them all into a blender and hit frappe, because that's what we got. We got this like weird amalgamation of things where apparently Merlin's real. Merlin is a real thing, so Arthurian legend is apparently real in this universe. Um, so we had in elements of King Arthur. We have some spy elements. We have some We have some World War II in there for some reason that completely contradicts the story that we've had building up to this movie in the past. We've also had the Bumblebee suddenly speaking. We completely retconned it from the first movie. It never happened because that's how Prime has to snap out of his little I'm evil now trance. The Nemesis Prime thing was handled very poorly. Working in Quintessa was very poor. Once again, this is there's a long train of Megatron being subservient to some other villain instead of being a villain himself. And this is the one that makes no sense whatsoever. There's a small implication he's under the same possession as Optimus Prime is, the same influence, but they never really go into that. And if there's a scene that explains it, they cut it. It's 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 a really messy movie. It felt like it tried to do way too many things. I think I think Cogman and Anthony Hopkins in this are about the best parts of the movie. Everything after that is just ugh, God. I hated this I hated the sequence of the Decepticons being revealed because it's there's this really weird out of place sequence with type name cards popping up if you've played Borderlands, it felt like that. It felt like here's the character, and then freeze frame, big splash color action. Here's the names plate come up. It felt weird and out of place, especially to introduce Decepticons, who the next time we see them get vaporized, like all but two of them. So what was the point? What's the point of making such a big deal over characters that get wiped out so fast? Oh God, hated this movie. I mean, it's at least a little bit more watchable, but it's still just no. And the ending's terrible too, because Cybertron's still right next to the planet, which is going to cause tectonic shifts, massive tides. You're talking about apocalyptic scenario. You just kind of pretend like it's okay. No, that's not how that works. All right, we're getting better with number 4, a little bit better with Age of Extinction. I don't like the spirit of this movie. The B plot of this movie is the world is out to kill Optimus Prime. Because ever since Dark of the Moon, we're basically the humans in the movies are basically just cast as robotic racist. No one tells Autobot from Decepticons. Optimus Prime and the rest of Autobots are always on the run and in hiding because humans are trying to kill them. Look, I understand it's big, scary aliens from space waging a war on Earth. I get that. But also, there has to be some distinction between the ones that are trying to destroy the planet and the ones who are trying to stop the destruction. And they have to have that has to be recognized. Otherwise, your heroes don't feel like heroes. I don't like when my heroes are on the run. I don't like when my heroes are seen as the villains when they had no reason to be seen as the villains. I mean, it's disheartening because you want to be able to root for the heroes, but it's hard to root for them when the entire world is against them and playing them out to be, just as bad as the villains. It's just uncomfortable. I want to see I want to see characters celebrating Optimus Prime as a hero. Is what I want to see. Is what I've never seen in these movies. But the movie itself isn't as bad as the other ones. I like the action sequences in this better. I do like that they tried to give a cast of new Autobots some personality for a change. I thought Hound was good. I think it's a much better bulkhead than a Hound, but I mean, I was not offended or upset by John Goodman and his performance there. The Dinobots make good set pieces, but their inclusion just feels crowbarred in. What the movie has going for it is Lockdown. Lockdown, I do think, makes for a pretty intimidating villain presence, and good job to Transformers Animated for making it all the way to the big screen with one of your best characters. Lockdown was good. I like the Mystique. The Mystique didn't pay off because it was supposed to be an introduction to Unicron. And then Unicron turned out to be a bust in Last Night too. Um, but you know what? I mean, this one was not as bad. The thing that about this one is if you cut 20 minutes out of it, and that's something you could have easily done, I think it'd be far more watchable than it is. Like Age of Extinction just feels super bloated, and it's hard for me to sit through the whole movie without getting exhausted. But it's not terrible outside of like what I said. And Optimus also, like, it comes across like he ends up mean spirited as well. He comes out of it. It's kind of a character arc for him in the movie, but also he just straight up shoots Kelsey Grammer in the face, which I don't think any Optimus Prime should be just like straight up murdering a human, villainous or otherwise. I know. Can you tell that there's not a lot to the live action movies I actually like? Even if I rank them, I'm like struggling to kind of find out, well, this wasn't so bad. Uh, I mean, it gets a little bit better. In like Dark of the Moon didn't upset me too much here. Um, and I think part of it was Megan Fox being gone. I never really was a fan of her and her acting. Um, I mean, it made the movie feel weird because Sam had a random new girlfriend who was super rich all of a sudden. But for what it is, um, it's not as bad. I do like the final scene. It's a very long fight scene that taking place in Chicago. But I don't. But I did think it was a decent piece. Sentinel Prime does make a decent villain. I mean, this I think more than any of the other movies is where Megatron is just completely ineffectual and inept. He is a non-factor as a villain in this movie because he's just he's Sentinel Prime's pet more than anything. But Sentinel himself being a rogue Autobot who's trying to put Cybertron ahead of even the Autobot causes, there is something interesting to that. Um, the plan itself, I think, is inept because you're trying to use 6 billion humans as slave labor to repair Cybertron, and we're not really built for like reconstructing an entire steel planet that's made for giants. That's a little bit beyond what we're capable of. So I think the plot was reaching a little bit too hard to be as high stakes as possible. I like your old fashioned, like, well, I'm gonna blow up the planet and absorb the energy to revitalize Cybertron kind of thing. Because like turning humans into slave labor is fairly impractical in this case, but it's not as bad. Like this one is still better. This is the like I said, it's like the beginning of like all of the other characters who we should be on the side of, government agencies and such, starting to be anti-Autobot for no reason because we're trying to depict humans as racist. But it's okay. Like this one for me is okay. I could have used a better resolution. Just like one last fight between Optimus and Megatron when both of them were just like half dead already. That felt pointless. If you actually read the novelization, Megatron and Optimus actually make a truce out of that. Like when Megatron says, I just want to be charged again, and like, what would you be without me? And Optimus drops his gun. Says like, no, there's just I just had to murder my mentor. There's been too much murder today. And Megatron, the Decepticons actually return to Cybertron. Planet's theirs to rebuild and control, and then the Autobots take up home on Earth. It's kind of like you stay on your side of the yard, I'll stay on my side of the yard. But like, there was actually like a proper resolution that would have led to some much more interesting things than this did. Because this led to Galvatron of all things. Ugh. All right, let's get into something a little bit more decent, like like the first movie. Uh, I think part of the why the first movie works so well is because there seems to still be awe and majesty to what's going on. When they transform, there's a little bit more reverence to it. The music works a little bit better in that sense, making it seem epic and exciting when it happens. In particular, um, what see, I'm trying to think like this movie still has issues. Don't get me wrong. I think there's way too many scenes in the dark. It's way too hard to tell characters apart. There's way too many kinetic fight sequences, and between things that should not be like flipping and jumping and spinning around. But part of what helps it is the limited cast compared to the previous movies. We only had 5 Autobots to work with in this movie, so and they were still treating them as set pieces. They didn't really, they get little bits of time to show their personalities, but outside of Bumblebee and Prime, you didn't really get a lot of feel for them. Part of that also comes from the fact that they didn't, this was the first time, so they didn't get a huge budget to have all these CGI robots running around and actually like emoting and talking and all that. So you didn't get too much chance of hanging out with the Transformers. But what we did get was a more consolidated story. The introduction of the Allspark, Decepticons that genuinely seemed like organized and had a plan rather than the snarling monsters that would come in the later movies. And weirdly enough, like a very rare time where you see a loyal Starscream who's actually trying to save Megatron for once, which is not something you're ever going to see again, most likely. So it's not bad. Like this one's still decent. Like I can still watch this one and be satisfied with it. My dad actually watches this movie way too often. But yeah, the first one I still think out of the Michael Bay set is still probably the best. And that leaves a very obvious answer for number one now, doesn't it? So I think this one just like immediately shot to everyone's number one on the live action movie list. There's genuine heart to this movie. You can tell the people who worked this movie actually cared about it. I like taking advantage of the elements to it. Bumblebee like klutzing around inside the house it's a little cartoon and over the top, but at the same time, it's enjoyable over the top. I get a genuine connection between him and Charlie in the way that I never got between him and Sam. They didn't feel a need to force a romance in, which is also appreciated. They did not feel like they incorporated elements of like nods to the past that felt appropriate. It actually felt like actual like legitimate loving nods to past Transformers rather than checking the boxes, which things like freedom is the right of all sentient beings in the first one seemed. Things like that. Um, like there's a genuine heart to this movie, which is something that is kind of lacking from all the others. And then you got like Shatter. And Shatter makes for such a good villain. It's a Decepticon being deceptive. Imagine that. Imagine that. The Decepticons are being deceptive and like tricking the humans. That's another thing in the other movies I hated was in in the last night we've come so far on the humans hating the Autobots that they would rather cooperate with the Decepticons who tried to destroy the planet. Like, what sense does this make? How did you flip the script that hard? And Autobots are still seen as like villains here too, but that comes from a place of lack of understanding. Like you have John Cena's character, who actually grows a respect for Bumblebee after he figures out exactly who this character is, and that's kind of how every authority figure in Transformers should have gone at some point. They never quite did. But yeah, I think that's a pretty universal response. I think most people would say the Bumblebee is the best of the live action. So no real surprise what ends up number one. I think my number 6 is more surprising because I think a lot of people would put would put probably The Last Night as the end. But just for me personally, God, I absolutely hated Revenge of the Fallen and everything it did. So just for the sake of having it all out there in one video, that is what I thought of these 6 live-action Transformer movies and where TJ of 2022 would rank them. I remember if you go back and listen to WTF and TFW podcasts where we watch back and actually talk about the movies when they came out, you're going to get a lot more excitement out of me. you're gonna get a lot more positivity out of me. I think that does end around like we're much more critical of Age of Extinction and Last Night than the other three, but you can tell my tastes have changed. And I've started to look at these in different lights, and it's not favorable lights, I will admit. So I am very much hoping that Rise of the Beast learned from the lessons that Bumblebee did, considering how much seems to be going on in that movie from everything we've seen, new factions, new story, new locations, back to big budget. I'm concerned, but considering how universal the response to Bumblebee is, fingers crossed that they actually did learn. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.